Hi again, part two of the reading for Bobby. Okay, Bobby. Okay, where were we? So we just talked about what your sort of intuitive side is hinting at. Um, and intuition, I do think, plays sort of a big role here. I don't think you really know how to explain how you know what you know. I think you just have a hunch, basically. Between the fact that you have the Lovers and the fact that you're sort of represented by the Queen of Cups, both of those cards are heavily intuitive, and sort of show you to be more in the know than you maybe think you are. Um, so I think it's also telling you to trust the vibes you're getting from the situation. Um, and I think maybe the next move is to act on them a bit more. Um, provided, well, provided you want to possibly rock the boat a little bit. I mean, it depends on how much this means to you. Um, okay. So your compared to that, your your hopes and fears are interesting. Um, I'm noticing that you have a lot of kind of feminine cards in your reading, and that's not to make a jab at you or anything like that. But feminine archetypes in tarot are sort of all about a very passive energy and one that sort of waits to be energized, not of its own agency. The masculine energies always are the ones with agency and power, and um, well, I shouldn't say power because the female cards have a lot of power too. It's a different kind of power. Um, it's more internal as opposed to external, that sort of thing. But in this case, I think that emphasis on femininity in your cards is sort of um, echoing this very passive feel I'm getting from you. Like you're just really not that interested in partaking in it as much. Um, or really shifting it around. And I think maybe that's sort of getting back to the other thing about, your friends' kind of zeal when it comes to this and their ambition. They're very excited, and they're kind of jumping themselves into a trap, and you're sort of just not as interested. Period. And it's okay to to say that and to accept that. You're just not feeling it, my friend. So the Princess of Discs is possibly one of my favorite cards in the pack. And she is, as Crowley says, she is the most receptive of all the cards because she is kind of the final vessel for everything in the universe. And so she's sort of femininity at its peak. And so I think in some ways you think that you're going to have to sort of just submit to this person's willpower. I think you feel that you're just going to have to kind of stay silent on the issue and sort of just let it happen, and then sort of deal with the consequences of that, and the work that's going to have to come from that. There is, I'm getting this sense, and I don't know why, but it's sort of like, maybe I'm wrong, but that like there's sort of this guy is also putting responsibility on you that you don't want to take or something, that like this is going to be work for you that you didn't ask for, and it might mean that you're going to have to learn new things and like adapt to new situations, and like that's sort of intimidating, but you're ready and willing to do it, which is very um, which is really kind of you, and it shows a really generous spirit. But at the same time, we can't always be totally like that in our relationships. I just did a blog post on the nature of divine love, and the Pope, bless his heart, has written things about how divine love is sort of about an equilibrium between agape and eros. And agape is sort of this very self-sacrificial love in which we sort of just give ourselves willingly to the people we care for, and how eros is sort of the opposite, where you strive to possess something because you love it so much that you want to have it as your own. And so that kind of tension between you and the other is what develops this sort of erotic emotion. Um, so yeah, so I think in this, what I'm getting at is that your relationship right now, you're giving a lot of agape. You're giving a lot of like, I am ready to do this for you. I mean, I really don't want to, but I just, I'll do it if you want me to. But there's not a whole lot of, uh, you're not making enough of a stand for yourself either, because he has to want to support you too. I mean, this needs to be a two-way street, and you're sort of getting in your own way here, by not letting it be one. And I think in the immediate future you have the moon, which is sort of indicative of this. The moon is another intuitional, making up words here, intuitive card, but it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, I think you're going to very much continue to have these hunches and sort of this. You're going to very much continue to know that it's not really going to work. And that's going to stress you and sort of bum you out, because it's going to be very unknown. I think what this person wants to do is really ambiguous in the sense that it could either do really well or it could utterly flop and damage both your relationship and perhaps your financial standing too. And so it's something that needs to be discussed much more in depth before it's put into action. Okay, um, if anything. But the moon is telling me that you're definitely, this is going to leave you in the immediate future feeling very uncomfortable and unsure of yourself, of where you stand, of your relationship, where that stands, and how this is all going to turn out. It's going to be very murky, and again, you're going to have to rely on sort of these hunches that I do think you're having. Um, the other thing about the moon is that well, no, I'm not going to go there. Not really relevant, I think, for this reading. Um, okay, so your overall outcome is lust, the Three of Wands, and the Fool. And lust is Leo, uh, and is another one of my favorite cards. The Three of Wands is the Lord of Virtue, and the Fool is just the element of air. Sometimes the planet Uranus, vaguely. So yeah. So Leo, I think Leo is a sign in Crowley's tarot that is all about energy, force, and fire, and passion, and love, but also just it's sort of wild and almost inebriated. It really is unrestricted by anything that demarcates normalcy. But it can be very overzealous. So I think that, lust is sort of telling us that the overall outcome is that this is going to be something um, that I think you're both going to have to put a lot of energy into. Uh, Conceivably, it is saying that you might become less ambivalent over time, I think. I see it as something that directly affects the Knight of Cups, your friend here, who's got it all planned out, supposedly. Um, I think for him, he's going to be very excited to do this. It's something that he's going to really enjoy doing. And I think in your case, it's something that you might also come to enjoy. That it's not necessarily, it's interesting because your higher self is telling you about the Five of Cups, and so there's a real contradiction there. And I'm not sure why that is. I actually don't have a reason for that. It's very odd. Um, you know, um, hmm. It's very weird. Unless it's just, unless that, lust bit refers less to you and more to him, or, there are a number of ways I could be sort of reading too much into it, or not enough, or in the wrong direction. But I don't know. I think in general, the lust card sort of tells me that things are going to happen very quickly. That plans are going to be sort of made very hastily with a lot of gusto, and not necessarily a whole lot of practical planning. I mean, it'll be planned out, but I don't know how much in a way that's going to, again, jive with your needs, and again, if I read it as far as elements are concerned, all the fire cards have to do with an external person, I think, and so I do sort of think that it reflects this Knight of Cups guy who is not really listening to you, and or however you want to think of it, not listening to you, or you're not even talking at all. Sorry, my computer's going to die. Okay, so, but at the same time, it's just there. I'm really sorry. There is just a very odd contradiction here, because the sun is also a big part of your reading too. In the Four of Discs, sort of your comfort zone where you are now, and the sun is part of Leo, and the sun is part of the Three of Wands and the Fool, sort of, as well. So the sun is a planet of growth and sort of freedom and harmony and that sort of thing. And so I do think in the long run, your relationship isn't going to necessarily be upset by this. It's going to stay, for the most part, balanced to a degree, or at least it won't necessarily become tumultuous in any way, okay? And it also might be, in general, a good growing period for the two of you. It could be kind of a maturation process, um, and sort of allowing you to see each other in a different light. The Fool does sort of signify a sort of random element to it, a sort of nonsensical happiness, and in some ways it does sort of represent, I think, the general not thinking about practical things when it comes to this situation. That's going to continue to be an issue. But at the same time, I do think it also represents, a fresh start. Possibly a few random things that sort of pop in unexpectedly that maybe give you a few bumps, but it's nothing that you won't be able to weather. Um, I Yeah, I mean, the overall result is very positive. Um, Lust is a fantastic card when to get as a final result, I think, for when you're thinking of a new endeavor. It does sort of demonstrate that it's not going to be something that will burn out necessarily, that it's going to continue to be a very important thing, um, and will be done, I think, will be done well. The Three of Wands sort of tempers Lust's craziness and sort of tells us um, that it'll be managed in some way, I think. I don't think it's going to be necessarily total ludicrousy, but I don't know. Um, I think you're a particularly practical person, and so that's why you're not quite getting it. Um, and I think in some ways, you know, hmm, well, I don't know. This was a tough reading, I have to say. But I do wish you the best of luck. I have to end this because I'm at 14:44. Um, but I will tell you that it'll be okay. It really will. It'll be tough for now, but I promise it'll get better. Okay? Thank you very much. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay? Bye.